Hello and welcome to the Drunkduck Quackcast. This is the Drunkduck Quackcast starring Tanserine. Starring Baines. And
Is that it?
starring Ozone Ocean. No, it's not the usual start. I just do things the way I feel like. That's how I roll.
Okay, awesome.
All right. So, welcome to the everybody. This week we're talking about steaks. Steaks in stories. Not steaks on your plate or steaks in the ground or steaks in a vampire. We're talking about steaks.
Steaks on a plane. None of that.
Steaks on a plane. Yeah, that's a good one. Get these goddamn steaks off this goddamn plane. Or whatever that line was.
Goddamn plane. It had the different swear words, but yeah.
These are the same swear words. Oh, it's weird. In the Quackcast, I don't swear. And on Drunkduck, I don't swear. So it's a weird version of me that I'm not Australian because all Australians swear and I can't do my swearing at all anywhere. Or anyone can see, except for the DD Patreon video. Where it's swearing all the time. Okay, so yeah, we're talking about steaks in stories, especially when stakes are way just people elevate them too high, and it sort of loses people's connection to the story because the stakes are no longer relatable. So that's what we'll talk about. But before we get into that, we have to bring up the featured comic. Featured comic was a comic that I featured this week, and it was Adkine. So I'm going to tell you about Adkine now. Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and my feature for the week was Adkine. The forest hides a very dangerous secret. A great black wall, behind which is said to lurk an ancient race of snake people. But maybe that's just a silly folktale. That's what Shira and Jonathan think anyway, as they hike through the sun-dappled shade from the trees on their search for a mythical river of gold. Meanwhile, a strange young man called Hizuk is about to be granted his freedom. This is a fantasy adventure story. The art is full colour, consistent, and very nicely done. It's a bit of a mystery to it. It's a fantasy story with a bit of mystery and intrigue and all sorts of things happening. And yeah, who are these snake people anyway? I want to find out. So I hope you like Adkine. This is a comic that's rated E for everyone, and it was written and illustrated by He Serpenti. So, hope you enjoy it. And that was the featured comic, Adkine. Okay, so after that we have the featured music. Gummels has given us the theme to, oh my god, the title of this comic. I Won't Marry the General as the Dragon Lord's Only Daughter. That is the title of this comic. Very long. And this is this is a dense, layered palace of a tune. I won't marry the general as the dragon's only daughter is a layered palace. It sounds like the theme to a major Hollywood film. We have a lot of body, depth, power to the sound. All electronic. You can just imagine mysterious opening scenes, titles fading into view and flicking off screen as you wait in anticipation for the story to begin. So take it away, Gummels, with your theme to I Won't Marry the General as the Dragon Lord's Only Daughter. And that was our musical theme to I Won't Marry.
Generals. I'm the dragon's daughter. Green Day song.
Lords, yes, that's it, Baines. God. Alright. So, after you finish listening to us say that 10 million times and that incredibly long title, we're going to be talking about stakes in stories, in movies, in comics, in written stories, anywhere there's stakes. High stakes, low stakes.
I don't want to drag. Generally, I don't want to drag in the daughter. Oh wait, I'm still playing with that.
You're not going to marry.
I was thinking of the title. There is a loophole in that title because she says that she won't marry him as the dragon daughter, or I don't
Dragon
remember
Lord's
exactly.
only daughter.
Yeah, but she could marry him as someone else, like as the princess of the realm.
That might be what's happening.
Or she wants her father to have another girl, and then she won't be the only daughter, and then she'll marry him.
True. Oh my
Yeah.
God. We're lawyering it up. We're loopholing this thing. Get him demoted from being the general. Oh no, because okay. So it's not that. It's the Dragon Lord. So get him demoted from being the Dragon Lord. There you go. So now he's the Dragon Baron. Or the Dragon Squire.
Or he could be promoted and become like the Dragon Prince or something.
Oh.
Exactly. Increase the stakes in this story. Make him the Dragon King. So she, in order to get married, she has to somehow assassinate the current king in order so her father becomes the new king and she becomes a princess and she can marry the general because she's got enough status and so that's the stakes are increased.
Honestly, I hope that this is all in good faith. Like, we have not read the comic. It sounds awesome. Like the title got our attention. So if the title gets our attention, imagine the content, then please go read it. So yeah.
I don't know.
I'm definitely going to. I love that title. Yeah.
It's an A-rated comic, adult rated, and I clicked through and I couldn't find any adult rated stuff. So I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. It's very strongly anime looking. So who knows? Who knows?
All right.
But it promises to be adult rated somewhere. All right. Well, after that little diversion into the stakes of this particular comic, we're talking about stakes in general in stories. Now, Chance and I had an interesting discussion on our Patreon video, where, of course, if you pay like $5 a month or so, I think that's the subscription rate, you get to watch our Patreon videos, and you see us actually talking. And of course, in the nude, because we typically do the Patreon videos in the nude. That's our typical way, so it's worth watching. And of course, we're nude underneath our clothes. I mean, so it's not really worth watching. No, we have interesting discussions, and we talked about this idea of objective stakes versus subjective stakes. So it was my idea, firstly, that okay, so stakes can be sort of quantified in like an objective, like we can categorize them rather objectively, like death is a high stake, destruction of the universe, that kind of thing, and generally people will consider that and agree that those things are higher stakes. And Tance is saying that, yeah, it can also be communicated to the audience that this is a high stake because it means something to the characters, and that can also be communicated to the audience that they will care about it, and this will become a bigger stake because they are invested in it. So there are two different ways of looking at it, but I think possibly they're both true. Both these things have validity in different ways. So that's how I think we'll start, because definitions are always important. They sort of guide the way you talk about things. So we're keeping it open for both those things to be true in various regards. That way we're not kind of directed into talking about one thing and only one kind of interpretation of it's true, and like avoiding the other one or whatever. So that out of the way, so Baines, you had a very interesting news post that gave rise to this whole thing, and it was about the Marvel movies and Marvel TV shows, and you were saying they have lost people's interest because their stakes are now unrelatable.
Yeah, well, I think there's kind of like a rise and fall, and I love what you and Tance said on Patreon. It cleared things up a lot, because I was thinking more like towards your point, more literally, or more like, okay, literally in this plot, what are the stakes? But that can be a completely different thing from, does anyone care about this? Or does this, have an impact on people who are watching it? That's such an important point, and definitely true. And the more I think about it, the more I think you can have universe or multiverse ending literal stakes in a story, but it can be like a comedy like Rick and Morty, where it's like, it doesn't matter emotionally, kind of. The Avengers movie, I would put in the same thing. It's world ending and alien force invading, but it's kind of like comedic, and it doesn't. The stakes are more about these people and like, can they be a team? But it's more kind of, it's not highly emotional for the most part. Maybe on certain characters, about them it is.
What do you mean?
Yeah. Anyway, so I mean, like, if something can be in a literal way in the script, in the story, it's world-ending stakes. Like the whole planet could be destroyed or it could not, but it's played as comedic, like in Rick and Morty, or semi-comedic, like in the first Avengers movie, where it kind of feels there's a semi-lightness to it.
That can be true, but I tend to find it irritating when, like, those objective stakes are really high, but people really don't treat it as it's really high, or it doesn't have the like the gravitas that something like that should have. It's like, say, oh my god, these characters have just been through this terrible, situation. They've witnessed half the crew of their ship dead or something like that, and yet they're laughing and falling in love. And you think, but these kind of objectively bad things have happened, but this doesn't have any like real bearing on you, so that divorces that like ruins my suspension of disbelief and makes me not so like involved in the story anymore, because these things that should be higher stakes to you aren't. Yeah. So that could be a problem for me anyway.
Oh yeah, I don't disagree. Yeah, I don't know if that's a problem of stakes or it's just a confusion of tones, or a confusion of what story's being told or whatever. But yeah, I'm not saying that this works or doesn't work, but yeah, I agree with you. That can be tough. And we were talking about Star Trek Lower Decks, which I started watching, and that was my issue with maybe the first couple episodes. It's like people were dying gruesomely, and it was played as comedy, and that can, in certain contexts, that can work, but it's like nobody cared. Their crewmates were dying, and it was just like, oh, that's not very Star Trek. But
the first couple of episodes, I will agree, of Lower Decks, I only got into it because of the way the characters looked, and I wanted to see where it was going, but they weren't so good because that Mariner character was really crap. She was way too
Annoying.
competent. Yeah. It's like
Yeah, that
anytime you
too.
have a character
No,
who
she
is
was annoying.
who's like as the series goes on, we discover, oh wow, she's like stayed being demoted to an ensign all this time because that's what she wants to do. So that gives a bit more background as to why she's so competent and why she's so good at everything. But to begin with, yeah, she was just annoying because she was way too competent for being a beginning ensign like all the rest, and there was no explanation for it. There's no reason for that to happen. She was just super annoying, like Kant said. And that's not like a sexist thing, because it would have been annoying if there was a man character doing the same thing. Wouldn't have mattered, or a transgender,
totally.
or a genderless character.
She stops being annoying. I generally get annoyed not by overcompetence, but this she has a very cavalier attitude to certain things that she shouldn't have. Like it's the gravitas that Baines said, especially in the beginning episodes where she doesn't really open up, so we don't really see what the real character behind the mask, behind the facade is like. So I was really annoyed because of that more than her competence. I could sort of roll with it a little bit. But yeah, that incongruence with the stakes annoyed the hell out of me. But afterwards, when it stops being incongruent for specific reasons, and I will not spoil what it is, then it stops being annoying and you can be immersed. And I also stopped finding her as annoying. Like she's not the character I would like if I was in lower decks. I would respect her, but I would probably not be her friend, or we would be at each other's throat and be friends, but I would never be like I would constantly not like the way she talks. But yeah, goes so.
Yes.
I'm glad to hear this. Yeah, I had the same thing. Yeah, with the first, and after a couple episodes, it only took a couple episodes, and maybe the creators saw the same thing, or they corrected, or they deepened, or you just learned enough about the character, and you start to see some of the like she does have flaws, like a real person, and there's reasons for certain things. Yeah.
Well, the other characters also come on board as well more strongly,
Mm-hmm.
which is a good thing.
Yeah.
We start off with only her and Boimler as being the main characters, but then the whole ensemble starts to pick up and they join in.
By the way, Boimler also I find him annoying in the first episode as well. Like I don't like
him too. Yeah, me too. Yeah, I didn't like him either.
But then again, then you start to like him for specific reasons. So
yeah, well, he was a bit too. So he was the opposite of her. She was way too competent. There's no real, reason for it, and he was way too naive, even for someone who's actually in Starfleet. Like, obviously, he was in Starfleet. He should have been slightly more competent than just being a fanboy in his own world, and that's what he is. So yeah, he becomes more real after a while.
Yeah, and that I can go with this because sometimes they give you this first impression, and even in real life you get a first impression of a person, and then if you get to know them, maybe that is reinforced, or maybe you realize that it's not exactly that. It's this person has nuance that you cannot see at first glance, exactly because they do certain things for certain reasons. So I like that. I like that about Lower Decks. Totally go see it if you haven't seen it. So
it gets better.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But stakes. Well, okay, so Marvel is the greatest example of stakes at the moment because there's a million movies and TV series that are all part of it. And they tend to ratchet up the objective stakes way too high over and over
Yeah.
and over.
I think I went on a tangent there with Lower Decks, but yeah, that's what I was supposed to say. My article was sort of more about the literal stakes, like what's happening in the story, not really thinking in terms of like, I mean, I guess I was thinking like, do I care? Do I not care? And that can be an effect of getting too big, is that the audience can't relate, doesn't care, it doesn't seem to matter, or it's not interesting enough or investing enough to matter, or something like that. What's great about comics is they can tell big stories and then they can tell small character focused stories, you know. And it seemed like after like Infinity War, Endgame, like the literal stakes had gotten so big with the world and the sort of this, you know, universe conquering character, even though we're invested in the characters and like how it's impacting them and what they're going through. It's it was so many characters, it was big action. It seemed like after that getting small, like they would do in the comics, you know, you get small, you focus in on individual stories, individual characters again, and into smaller stories, you know. Which the Netflix shows did very well, especially Daredevil on Netflix was really cool for telling a smaller story.
Oh, those
You
are
know,
DC stories, aren't
no, that's Marvel, but it was
they?
not
Okay.
strictly connected to the movies because I don't think the Marvel executives were in charge. There was a
Right.
relationship, but the stuff on Netflix, I don't really know how it worked, but there was a sort of a complicated thing going on there.
You're right. You're right.
Um, yeah, but they were, you know, a bit darker and edgier, more sort of dangerous feeling to them. They were very small, like street level kind of environment to them,
Yeah,
which
much.
can hit you differently. You know, it can be really really nice. And,
Well, I mean,
um,
what I would love is a big Marvel movie or a big DC movie that just had your Batman or your Superman focusing on old fashioned crime fighting. Like set it in the 1930s, 1940s, that kind of stuff. That's why I loved Captain America movie. Because although it ratchets up to something, a big battle with the Red Skull, it starts out as traditional 1940s Captain America. Just
Hmm.
doing his dances and fighting Nazis, and it was as simple as that. Just simple military missions, the
mhm.
lower stake kind of stuff, and they ratcheted up to something slightly bigger, but even not that big in the Marvel universe, and it just worked, and it was very true to the character, and I would just love it like a superhero movie where the characters actually fight criminals instead of
Yeah,
you know
the
Right.
problem with that, I think, is mostly that the criminal, unless you have like a super villain being the opposite uh, force, the opposing force, it's a bit like punching down if they are like super heroes with superpowers going after like bank robbers or something like that. It's low stakes, but it's low stakes not because it's not important. It's low stakes because the bank robber cannot be a threat to the superhero unless, and then you might have characters that are very interesting, like I think Kingpin or Lex Luthor, or people that don't have superpowers, but they are a super adversary through
well
other means.
it also depends on the superhero, like okay, so Captain America, what's his superpowers? He's just a tough. He's just a muscle man, and he can throw a shield. So he doesn't have superpowers. Or say, Batman in the DC universe. His superpower is like he plans ahead and he's got his gadgets. So again, you're not looking at someone who necessarily has to be, fighting an interdimensional wizard. Superpower's money. He can be fighting a normal criminal and it would work very well. So it just depends. Like say Wonder Woman, she has her like every single power in the world these days. She can fly and she's got super strength and basically does anything Superman can do. So yeah, she's not very useful in these kind of low stakes terms. And Superman as well, Power Girl, all those kind of characters. But there are ones that can function very well in these lower kind of lower stakes kind of worlds. Baines, I'm sure you could think of a few.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was thinking I was thinking of Superman and the original Superman movie, the Christopher Reeve movie. But it's funny that until things get bigger at the end of the movie, he's facing off against cat burglars and muggers, people who have posed no threat to him, not even close. But it's still fun. It's done in such a fun way, and you like seeing. I still remember that guy kind of scaling up with his suction cups or whatever, scaling up the building. The criminal, and he walks up to Superman's boots. Superman's standing sideways on the building.
Oh dear!
Knocks the guy, and the guy falls, and Superman catches him. And the mugger, who Clark, he's preserving his secret identity. As Clark Kent, he's with Lois, and they get mugged, and he has to step in quickly to be shot. So she isn't shot, and also pretend to be knocked down by the bullet and stuff like that. It can be effective. It's a lot of fun to watch,
Oh, right. I hadn't remembered that because it's been decades since I've seen that movie. But yeah, okay.
The whole thing with oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say I don't remember a lot of the specifics either. It's been so long. But go ahead, Tim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the stakes when he's mugged as being with as Clark with Lois are high because he doesn't want his identity to be revealed. So
yeah,
he is presented with an impossible quote unquote situation where he wants to save Lois and he also wants to not reveal himself. And he has to think quick and stuff. So in a jiffy, in a very small sequence, the stakes spike, and then he resolves the case the stakes in very comedic way. If I recall, he pretends to be like he wasn't shot and he fainted out of fear or something like that. And
that's right.
Scoffs at him.
Yeah, and then it reveals that he actually caught the bullet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fun stuff. Yeah, that's a good point. And it's kind of like he wants to save everyone. Mm-hmm. It's made personal with his friends and especially with Lois. Like he doesn't want them to be hurt, to be killed. He has to save them, plus preserve his secret. So it's not life and he's not going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Highly unlikely, anyway.
Yeah.
But they did have to introduce the idea of kryptonite to bring him down, kind of thing.
Yeah, but even before that, and that's the point. Oh my God, I'm stuttering for some reason. I'm so sorry. The stakes are high because if he loses, his happy place, in a sense, is going to be lost. Like, he will not have the security of a double identity, and he will not have the relationship he does with Lois as Clark, and all of that. So that's pretty high if you consider it,
Yeah.
because his life is going to be ruined, at least the way he wants it to be. So
Yep. It's true.
Yes, the subjective stakes for him, especially if the audience can understand that as they relate to their character and to the world, can be quite important. Versus what happens in the Lois dies and he has to revive her by turning back time or something? Or was it
yeah.
some
Oh my
weird thing
God.
in the end? Apparently,
That was
you
an
can.
early for big superhero live action. That was an early one. They were figuring things out.
Mm-hmm.
It's that's over the top. It's like, well, if characters can do that, if that character can do that, but it for what it is, I think it works.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a
And
great film.
another example I have for the stakes being high just because it's important to the character and nothing else, in a sense, is um, a story, a comic book of Tintin called Tintin in Tibet. So in that story, he he had a close friend that he had met in another story called the Blue Lotus, and his name was Chang. He was this young boy that he really related to and helped him solve a mystery and bust an opium ring. Anyway, they bonded over uh, chasing bad guys in a sense. So in Tintin in Tibet, he reads in the newspaper that a plane in which Chang was crashed over Tibet, and there are no survivors. So we start off with no stakes in the sense of having survivors, because there are no survivors on this plane. Uh, so Tenten wants to go up in Tibet where the plane crashed and find him, because he is convinced that he is not dead. And everything shows that he's just deeply in grief, and he cannot, like, he is in denial. He cannot process the fact that his friend is dead. And we eventually embark on this rescue mission for a corpse. And the only thing that is important is, and what you are afraid of, is that Tenten is going to basically kill himself over trying to get into this very remote area where the plane crashed, and he's going to kill himself trying to get there. So you are very invested. The way it is presented in the story, and we're talking Tenten. Tenten is basically a very dry character. He's very stoic and very like straight laced, by the numbers, support the status quo kind of guy. But in this, you really feel for him. It's the only one, I think, that I can think of story in which he is very emotional as a character. And this emotionality is what keeps you engaged in getting through this with him. And how the story resolves is of lesser importance. I will not spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it. But yeah, that's the whole thing. And the other stakes are that he has this sidekick slash blood brother level friend called Captain Haddock, who is always a recovering alcoholic, and he's basically as dry as Tenten is. He's super colorful, and he
Leather
has all
and
of the
skites.
yeah blistering barnacles, all of that.
Yes.
And he tries tooth and nail to stop Tenten from going on this rescue mission, and that's where the comedy happens. Because he's also a klutz and he's never lucky and all of that, and he still follows Tenten to this wilderness. uh, basically saying we're all gonna die. Like he enhances the stakes because he is a friend who goes there just for his friend. He has no hope that they are going to find anyone alive there. So that is an awesome dynamic that plays for laughs. You laugh a lot, but you also are afraid for them. So I find that these are technically low stakes again because there is no life at stake, life or death. Death has already occurred, but it's still high stakes because it's important to these two. So long-winded thing,
Yeah.
but
No, that's great. Yeah. Makes me wonder, this is a comic? Did you say you didn't say
yeah,
Tintin, did you? It's Tintin. Oh,
yeah, it's Tintin. In Greek we call it Tenten, and in French it's also Tenten. And yeah,
It's similar
oh,
enough that yeah, it's all the same.
yeah.
it's a book. It's a graphic novel, Tenten.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
When I say book, I
It's
mean
good.
comic, right? It's in the
Yeah.
series of Tintin, and it's one of the five of the latest ones that is made. And the backstory in this, as a side note, is that he made this while he was in mourning for his wife, or in any ways he was dealing with a lot of grief. I don't remember exactly the details. The only thing I remember that stuck with me was that his psychologist or psychiatrist, whoever, told him that you are never going to finish this particular story, this particular book, because he was taking a lot of time to finish it. And in the end, he felt very triumphant because he proved his psychologist wrong, that he finished the story.
So it has a lot of had stakes to it as well. The actual completion of the book. So if he hadn't completed it, then he wouldn't have resolved those emotional issues. I mean, we can say he did because
Yeah,
it's a recounting of a story. And stories, no matter if they're true or fictional, we tend to structure them in a way that has happy or resolutions and things like this.
mm-hmm.
So yes, that's pretty cool. Stakes in stories. Like when I tend to write stories, I'm not a good enough writer to think about complex stakes and stuff like that. I'm just looking at objectives and what I want to happen in the story, and everything kind of conforms with that. So I'm not even thinking about stakes. I'm so like, I'm so amateurish that it's the stakes work themselves out. That I don't deliberately set that up in the story. And
It's
that's
funny
just how
when
it
you
works.
mentioned when today you said we're going to talk about stakes and stuff, and I had written a news post about it, and we were doing it today. It made me think about the stuff I'm working on right now. I have a story in one comic, and I'm like, did I figure out what the stakes are? Like, I know what he's trying to try to do, but like, who cares if he does it or not? I didn't really think it through. And the other story, the Kaiju Valentine story, it's sort of a sitcom episode, and it's like it seems like maybe it's big stakes, but maybe it's not really. Maybe it's more personal. Um,
But are you doing the same thing, letting the stakes work themselves out?
yeah, yeah. I guess that's the point. Yeah, I don't really always think about it
Yeah, it's
deliberately.
not fun,
I'm
isn't
just
it?
kind of
So,
hopefully it's there and someone cares about
I mean, I think that's valid because you can you can analyze things for stakes afterwards. It doesn't necessarily have to be something you as a writer deliberately include or think about in those kind of terms. It can just be
it.
it can be just part of the way things are written, can't it? It can, like, you don't think
Yeah,
about breathing as a human, or you don't think about you know the stakes that you face daily, but you can analyze that afterwards and work out what they were.
Yeah, you can
Mm-hmm.
have an intuition about it, maybe like this is
Yeah.
working, or like if it's, for example, a romantic thing or whatever, you might get an intuition that, hey, this, who would care if these two people get together or not? Like, what's it
Yeah.
matter?
That's a great question in the sense that now that I'm starting a new story, I know what the stakes are and what the stakes are going to be. But in order for them to make sense to anyone, I cannot present them yet. I have to first allow readers to get to know not only the characters but the world, because the world is new. It's a world that you have to learn in a sense. And because I don't have a really a, I mean, it's quasi fish out of water in the sense that, oh, I used to be a bigot and now I'm surrounded by the things I was phobic about in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's not exactly that because it goes a lot deeper than this. It's not just this guy was uh, like very prejudiced and now they will see the light and stuff like that. It's not that. So in a sense, it's just that he gets to know some of the world, but the reader will learn about the world earlier than the main character, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, before the stakes can be stakes at all, you have first to care about the characters. I hope that will soon happen. And secondly, you need to realize why preserving the thing that needs to be preserved is important. So, and important to the characters and all of that.
Yeah.
And because I have an A story and a B story going on, the A story and the B story, one is grand, saving the world level grand, and the
Mm-hmm.
other one is very intimate, betrayal of a friend.
Right.
Who has betrayed whom? Um, who is right to be angry at who? All of that. And I'm not spoiling that because it's in the blurb, literally. Okay. So, and these things will be intertwined, but oh my God, I need to be so patient to wait to build the world and build the characters and then throw the stakes. And I hate that. I want to go like 20 pages in and get there. But I can't.
I mean,
So
could
to
you?
get
Maybe you could.
no, I can't.
Probably don't want
Because
to.
nobody will understand what's going on because the magic rules have to be established for it to make
Yeah,
sense.
but you could show characters being super concerned and caring about something, and you don't know as a reader why are these people caring about this? Why? And you could slowly introduce them to why they were caring about it as the story went.
Yeah,
It could happen
that
like that.
is that is a bit how is going to happen. But even for that to make sense, and I know that does like without really going into the weeds for this, and this is not the Verdant cast.
That's it.
I cannot really show this and have it make sense. It has to first, you have to have some kind of awareness of where you are. And then I can start because we are in the middle of everything that is going on, middle of the war, middle of the betrayal, middle of, pretty much everything. But I cannot really get into that before you know the
Yeah.
world.
Well, thinking more about
Mm.
influenced by you there, thinking about your story in terms of
Mhm.
stakes. Thinking about Pinky TA, and especially the latest story, Pinky TA 8, which is finished. Think about the stakes there, and yeah, they're pretty obvious stakes, I suppose, because there's war happening. There's part of the stakes is okay, the team has to finish the mecha in order to impress the general, that kind of stuff. And this team is competing with, Cece and everything she's doing and Ace is doing to seemingly betray them, and there's all that kind of stuff. So yeah, the stakes are there, and I think I have been, for all my talk about being an amateur and an idiot, just going along, I think I was clever enough because there is a lot of misdirection there, what the stakes really are, and how the characters think about it. So yeah, there's two ways of doing it, really. So thinking about it in terms of, planning the stakes to begin with, and just doing a story and approaching it in a more instinctive way and working out what the stakes are afterwards. So, and I think those are both valid kind of approaches, really. Because you don't have to plan everything when you're doing a story, because as humans, we understand what stories are, and we understand how things happen, and that people have to care about things have to mean something. So it works itself out regardless. But if you really know what you're doing, then that gives you an extra level of ability to plan and ability to write, because then you can have more subtle kind of things in there, because you've got a greater level of preparation that you've got access to. So it's like anything, really.
And then it's like if it's getting complicated or you have lots of characters or a complex story, like if you're like, intuition can work for a lot of things just because we are human, like you said, and we sort of have a feel for these things. But if it's getting really complex, if you can think about it when needed, you can hopefully not leave any dangling emotional things, or try not to leave any things that, like a reader will say, like, well, I was interested in this, and it just kind of dropped, like, or this was suggested and dropped. These things do happen, but or if you're writing lots of stories, like you're doing a series, or you want to do a lot of it, thinking about it can sometimes be good, even just to sort of realize that, this isn't working because there are no stakes and nobody's going to care.
Is my character caring about the wrong thing, or will my audience think that this thing really matters when it doesn't? So that's important. Like, there are stakes, but perhaps they're the wrong stakes.
Yeah.
That can be a factor.
And a character can be caring about the wrong things. That's sort of a well-established story structure in a way. Like, the character has a problem, or they have the wrong focus, they go after the wrong thing, or they do things the wrong way, even if the audience knows it or they can feel it. They do it the wrong way, and then hopefully they at least try to do it the right way. And,
well, I mean, say in my story PTA 8, the stakes that you're led to believe that are important in the whole story, in the final page you work out, oh no, I was misread it. None of that mattered.
Yeah.
It was all, so
it's
all
I read the whole thing when you posted the last page a few weeks ago.
Oh.
I got to go back and read the whole story.
I mean, I didn't. There were a lot of stuff I missed out and skipped over, so it wasn't that clever. But it sort of got there in the end. Yeah, that was the point I was trying to make. That war is shit, and there's different ways of winning wars. Very spot on in what's happening in the world today with Ukraine and Israel and places like that. And we really need a Quackcast about that, but I'm not sure about how to get into that, because it's very huge pitfalls. Yes, gigantic ocean-sized holes to fall into and drown.
The problem with that,
Go ahead,
no, you go ahead.
I didn't have much. I was just going to say there's ugliness all around. Like, one side trying to fight against the prejudice of another side, and I'm talking about us as observers outside of the actual situation.
Yeah.
Like, sort of a nastiness towards one group, and that group ignoring their own nastiness towards another. It's like, oh boy,
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. The biggest thing with these conflicts, in my opinion, and that's just my opinion only, is that people do not look, do not stay clinical when they should stay clinical, and they allow emotion to spill into or emotion or politics. Uh, and when I say politics, I mean like tribalist politics.
Mm.
Um, to spill into an assessment of a situation, and that is like a big uh, pitfall. That is how you slide into fanaticism and everything that that brings after. Um, so I have been watching appalled both of these conflicts and some other conflicts that are not as famous, I suppose. Um, that and really it comes down to our team always good, their team always bad, we holy, they devil, that sort of thing. And
Oh, yes, it
and
does.
I don't just mean because I said the word holy. I'm not talking about Israel versus Palestine only. If you see the sanctity, quote unquote, the holiness of one side is preserved by propaganda of that side in parallel where that is happening as well for the opposing side.
Of
And
course, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the facts are lost in all of this. Nobody wants to sit down, work the definitions, and look at the facts. Like, oh, it's okay when we do it, it's bad when they do it, that sort of thing. And when that happens, humanity has lost the game. And unfortunately, humanity has been losing the game for a very long time. So, yeah.
Yes. So yeah, it's that's as much as we're probably ever going to get into that.
Hmm.
So we'll get back to comics again. Um,
Yeah.
so we got 6 minutes to go on this cast, according to Google,
That can
and
be a fine stake to think about, like
Mm.
losing in a fictional setting. What's at stake ends up being the humanity of the
Hmm.
characters. Say, I think in another news post I might have talked about the monsters are due on Maple Street, that Twilight Zone story. That's kind of about paranoia and not trusting the people around you, kind of thing, and who is the secret threat. It's kind of like the thing, that movie, The Thing, um,
hmm,
and what turns out to be the real threat is the people mistrusting each other in itself and the violent reaction to it out of fear.
hmm.
You know, we destroy ourselves. Kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um,
And it's not just fear. I mean, it's very easy to hide behind a flag, any flag, and pretend that you are, you have the moral high ground. And in reality, what you are going after is something very low and very greedy or very, very mundane and dull and self-serving. And it has
right?
nothing to do with high stakes, in the sense high moral stakes, I mean.
Yeah.
And I think you will find that most of the conflicts humanity has been torn apart by are really the motivations are very very debased, I would say, and they really come from a place of greed rather than anything else.
Well,
Right.
I
That's
did.
my
I analyzed it like because did a lot of thinking about wars a long time ago. It's my comics PTA is very much a war comic, and it's about the
Mhm.
the badness, the evils of war. And I did a lot of thinking, and people say, "Oh, yes, religion's responsible for all the wars and disagreements." And the more I analyzed it and thought about all the wars I could think of, it's like almost all of them are about land and
Mhm.
resources. None of them are about religion or any of this bullshit or disagreements or sectarian stuff. It's just about resources and land, and you disguise it or you hide it in terms of, oh, this is our religion's this, our religion's that. But that's just an excuse. These are layers of excuses and social
And
stuff that are on top of, we need this land for our people versus your people. That's it.
And of course they do, because, and that's the amazing thing about humanity. Humans will not go to fight and be cannon fodder en masse for something that is, oh, let's go steal those guys' land. or oh yeah, let's go and take all their gold. Let's be thieves and thunderers. Nobody is gonna go behind that banner. But let's go bring the light of God to these heathens, or let's go liberate these other heathens.
Liberate, I love that. Let's invade them to liberate them. That's what we're doing.
Yeah,
we're liberating them.
Or let's go and eradicate the terrorists. This is not just a current excuse, that Israel is using. Just see how many terrorists have been the excuse for invasions and wars and carpet bombings and what have you. It's not just now. It's a very standard excuse. Why? Because everyone wants to be a hero. Nobody wants to be the thief. Everybody likes the profit of thievery, but nobody likes to be the thief. So of course they will use these excuses, these very high ideological morality, ideals, to motivate people to get behind the banner of, this dude that wants the oils or the, the territory or the Suez Channel or whatever it is. So,
well,
yeah.
That is true. The Quackcast is going to end because Google's going to kick us off. So, in stories, I like low objective stakes, and we're talking about this could be high subjective stakes, as in the characters really care about something, but it's not like world ending. It's not stuff that won't be relatable. I think that should only be reserved for rare instances in order for things to be built up towards it, rather than ignored and the world losing its personality. So bye everyone. Thanks for listening to Quackcast number 661. Bye.
Bye.